Supply Chain Talk, the live webinar with no presentations, no PowerPoint, just talk.
And welcome to this week's episode of Supply Chain Talk. My name's Alistair Chariton, your host this week. And this afternoon, we'll be covering as our main topic, building resilience in your supply chain through an economic downturn. But first, as usual, we will cover a topical news item, which we'll get to in a moment. I'll introduce my guests in a minute as well. And please, as usual, do contribute in the chat and Q&A panel on the right of your screens. And we'll be awarding a Supply Chain Talk mug to the contributions that we find most useful today. But even if we don't pick up your questions, I know that the audience always appreciates seeing different comments from all of you. So without further ado, let me welcome the first of my guests, who is Ahmed El-Deeb, who is B2B sales manager at United Oil Processing and Packaging. And Ahmed has 16 years experience as a supply chain and sales professional across Egypt and the MENA, Middle East, North Africa region. And in his role, he drives the industrial and food service sales operations for United Oils for processing and packaging. And he also has procurement experience in sourcing across many categories, including fresh, frozen and ambient products. And given his sales background as well, he has a great understanding of customer requirements, so bringing those two experiences together. My second guest is Nanda Kishore, Head of Global Supply Chain at Eramet Titanium and Iron AS. Nanda's worked across heavy engineering, automotive, marine and renewable energy sectors, and he's an expert in lean manufacturing, quality management and the Internet of Things. And I should mention that today Nanda has shown huge dedication because he's normally based in Norway, but is joining us today from Kathmandu because he's just successfully climbed, I've looked this up, the 6,746 meter, so almost 7,000 meter peak called Mira in the Khumbu region of Nepal, which is known as the gateway to Everest. So well done, Nanda, on that amazing climb and achievement. And my third and final guest today is Nicola Olagu, who is General Manager for Private Sector Sales in the corporate division of Amazon. Nicola is an expert in the sales function and procurement and brings 12 years of experience in retail, marketplace and B2B, with 10 years inside Amazon in France and in the US as well, using his trilingual skills. And he's passionate about people development and recruiting with over 1,000 interviews, which is an incredible number to have built up. And he uses his expertise in procurement to build customized B2B procurement strategies to help companies reach their organizational goals. So welcome all three of you. And let's turn now to our news item, which is headlined Ford calls for solution to potential EV tariffs. And this particularly focuses on the UK. It's an article from this week from transportandenergy.com website. And it's really covering this point that when Brexit was kind of developed and the deals were kind of done, such as they are, there would be a tariff if UK produced cars did not have enough local content. The same indeed applies for European cars being imported into the UK. And with EVs, with their batteries being mostly manufactured outside Europe and outside the UK, this means that cars and vehicles fall below that local content challenge, but it only really applies to EVs, not to petrol and diesel vehicles where there isn't the high battery content. So it's a real kind of quandary, and the article talks about this in that it potentially could really slow down the adoption of EVs if they become 10% more expensive. There's a real risk of tariffs actually having to be imposed from UK to Europe and Europe to UK, and it touches on all sorts of things, such as basically a lack of battery making capacity in the UK in particular, and in Europe as well, to some extent over the next year or two. Though I did see literally 10 minutes ago, there's just been an announcement on the BBC website that Jaguar Land Rover UK have just announced that they're going to be sort of jointly, kind of constructing a battery construction plant in the UK. So that will potentially solve the problem, certainly for Jaguar Land Rover and I guess other automotive customers. So a very wide-ranging area. And Ahmed, I mean, it's not directly related to today's topic, but what are your views? I mean, is the answer what's been done, that basically the government's got to support setting up factories to produce critical components like that? Do they just accept the tariffs and say, hey, that's market forces for you? What do you think the answer is?
Well, first of all, I'd like to look at the challenges that are internal and external that we do face on a day-to-day basis, whether it's in the automotive industry or in any kind of industry. The raw material sourcing, we have to look at the currency situation, we have to look at the political situation in the world currently, and the current conflicts that are happening in Europe and in Russia and in with China and the US and Taiwan. We've had the semiconductor problem in Taiwan for a while now. So basically, all these problems are challenges that will force us to think of alternative solutions and to look at localizing products, setting up a manufacturing plant. We have to do whatever it takes for us to overcome these challenges. I am currently in Egypt. We do have a lot of challenges, internal and external. We are a country that relies very heavily on importation of all kinds of raw materials. However, we do have a lack of foreign currency. And we are currently trying to set up local plants. We have recently moved to the electric power motor vehicles. What we have to do basically is try to overcome the challenges by planning, having contingency plans in place, having the government support, looking at foreign investors, the right partnerships. I think the UK needs to set up a plant. Ford in the UK need to set up a plant there. I think they did the right thing for doing that. In addition to having the right partnerships with other countries who are leaders in this category.
Thank you. Yeah, and that's a very interesting point you make, that actually for kind of economies like Egypt, where the currency is weak, actually there's already in effect a huge sort of surcharge on importing materials. So the more you can produce locally, there's very strong economic reasons to do so there as well. Nanda, I mean, I know Norway is one of the leading countries in the world for EV adoption, so I guess they've got through a lot of this. But what are your thoughts on the article and the situation in the UK?
Now, one of the difference between Norway and UK is Norway is not a manufacturing base like UK. And so we are more like application oriented. So that means we have the most dense per capita electric vehicles. But my thought on reading this article was this is one of the rarest cases where supply chain is challenged due to a regulatory which is causing a positive demand. And then this clearly says this situation calls for a collaboration between manufacturers and suppliers or potential suppliers. And as you can read from the article, it clearly mentions about Ford investing, and I'm sure much of it has also gone with collaboration with potential suppliers. And that's the only way I see this supply chain can take the challenge and overcome these kind of requirements: collaboration, transparency, digitalization. So these are the only things which can support us and make the companies. And we will see in very short time the companies who have been investing in partnerships and collaborations will be the ones who will benefit out of this. So this is a clear case, and Norway will not be affected because we don't manufacture anything. We import everything.
No, good point. No, but there's an interesting point you make about collaboration, because certainly in many different sectors, actually sometimes if the customers collaborate with the suppliers, that will allow a supplier to make the big investment for the long term, knowing that they may have a very long contract in position to protect that investment and make sure that it's a not too risky one. So it's a very interesting point you make there. Nick, what are your thoughts on this one?
it has been always a key focus for us to really move into this direction. So to give you a concrete example, so I work for Amazon Business, that is the B2B entity of Amazon. But overall, we have a plan and we have a big partnership with Rivian worldwide to really have only EV cars to do a big majority of our deliveries by 2030. The objective is to really scale this partnership and reach around 100K vehicles. We already launched 3K in the US. So for us, it's really a priority to think about how can we deliver in a more sustainable way, because I think a lot of people in the world think that Amazon is a website. And it's not a website. Of course, it's a website, but by nature, it's a logistic company. So we really need to change the way we address the supply chain challenges that we have today. But yeah, it's a big focus for us, and a lot of change management required. But it's in the center of our strategy that is around climate pledge, and our objective is to reduce drastically the impact that we have and be more sustainable overall.
Okay, no, thank you. Okay, well, let's move on now. I mean, I think it was really interesting just seeing how that specific very very focused example has a lot of lessons and a lot of solutions which are common to many other sectors. But let's move now to our main topic of building resilience in your supply chain through an economic downturn. And the first point we've got there is basically how do you manage your supply chain through a recession? And I guess that can involve diversifying to reduce risks in your supply chain, and indeed risk to business. So that could be opportunities in diversifying products or customers or channels, or other solutions to managing your supply chain through a recession. So Ahmed, what are your first thoughts on that point?
I have a couple of thoughts really quickly about that. Number one is we do have supply chain leaders who are active and who are proactive, and they take action really quickly. However, the majority that I've seen are on the opposite side of that. So basically, they are firefighting. There is no visibility. There is lack of planning. They have business continuity plans that have not been tested. So they need to be more proactive. They need to visit, develop suppliers. They need to assure supply, measure success, adapting to quick changes, scenario planning, robust planning, and the value mapping network, and then they need to increase their networks abroad. They need to partner up with the right suppliers. They need to have sources of foreign currency, export business, increase the portfolio locally, even with local products that are manufactured that don't have a US dollar component, that doesn't require importation of raw materials. So at least you can cover your local costs. I'm talking about localizing products. I'm talking about, interpret the risk, following the news, commodity updates, taking the appropriate action, preparing manufacturing plans, switching, to the right amount of labor. There are many things that can be done. However, you need to not panic, and you need to be able to adapt to the changes and the commodity shortages and the increasing costs around the world. People do open up branches for their business in countries like, for example, Saudi Arabia is very strong in the region, the UAE, to assure that they at least have a source of foreign currency coming in. They focus a lot on the food exhibitions and the food shows. They can open up new customers, export business. You need to come up with out-of-the-box solutions to sustain your business and to grow up in a market that is currently very challenging. You cannot just stand by. My biggest, and I'm gonna make it quick. My biggest and most important factor is that you need to train your sales force, and you need to train your customers on new products that you can add to your portfolio. You need to raise customer awareness on alternative formulation for the products, for alternative sources of raw materials as a contingency plan. You need to have all these raw materials and contingency plans approved and tested before, so that when the time comes, you can apply them right away.
Okay, no, thank you, Ahmed. Certainly, I mean, hearing a lot of ideas there, and I think a real common thread there is really planning ahead and thinking about these things and monitoring the whole situation rather than reacting, rather sort of in a panic, which is a risk if one hasn't laid those plans very carefully. Nando, your thoughts on the priorities when managing supply chains through recessions?
Yeah, I fully agree with Ahmed. The point is, supply chain cannot be successful if it starts to react, as Ahmed says, when the economic downturn has started. So the key things are flexibility and redundancy. So that means supply chain should take time to pre-qualify and onboard suppliers or potential suppliers across diverse geographies and across diverse markets to be ready to put them into action, and they should be tested. As Ahmed said, they need to be tested well in advance. So no supply chain can be successful when they start to react during any kind of a crisis. So the key word is to be more proactive and then have a strategy in place. First thing is they have to anticipate things, both positive demand and negative demand. So that's the key thing, I would say.
Okay, thank you. And Nicola, what are your thoughts on this one?
So from a supply chain perspective, for a company like Amazon, I think we're working on the two extreme of the funnel. First aspect is to also be more intentional with our customers, both our B2C customers and our B2B customers. All the customers are looking for more sustainable purchase now. So we are extending a lot our selection around used product, for example. We're also getting a certification for climate pledge friendly product that is directly knotted into Amazon, and you can filter on that. For the B2B companies, in the way they procure, our customers are always talking about their sustainable goals, for example. So we can be more intentional on that by selecting only sustainable products for their employees. We can also work with them to set up some rules to have a more inclusive or diverse way of purchasing. So one way of being more sustainable is also to get back to the community and to other products that are from small businesses around, or from women-owned businesses or minority-owned businesses. So we work on those aspects really from a UX perspective to make sure that we're influencing and being more intentional in the way our customers purchase. On the other way around, from a pure supply chain perspective, we have a lot of goals and a lot of mission to be more sustainable. Rivian is one of them, but we're also working in developing a lot the pallets, for example, to have more product at the same time, or to reduce the size of the boxes to avoid empty spaces. There are a lot of things that we do, but for us, we really see this as both sides. It's not only a supply chain challenge, it's also a purchasing challenge and a buying challenge. And we really want to handle this exhaustively.
Okay, so that's very interesting actually, because we talked about sustainability in several episodes in the past few months, and almost from what you're saying is it's during a recession it can be quite an important way of winning more customer business, because if you're seen to be sustainable and sourcing responsibly as well, that can really make a difference. I mean, Ahmed, is that something you see in your world, that people are really now asking for sustainable credentials? And that's a real important criteria for choosing you as a supplier, for example?
Yes, sustainability is very important, and you have to fight, all the way to make it happen. Whether it's, you have to do a lot more effort now to sustain the business. You have to keep on working hard and finding alternative sources for raw materials, for planning, for generating all kinds of reports to analyze accurate data. You have to work hard on customer service and having satisfied customers, staying in the market and encouraging your customers to work with you on diversifying their product portfolio to keep going. The problem is a lot of businesses go out of, they go bankrupt nowadays. So for you to keep going, you have to have really open communication with your customers. You have to work hard on your profitability and their profitability. Stay competitive. You need to be able to measure your success and sustain at least your sales. Maybe increase it, but you have to keep going.
Okay, and actually, before I turn to you, Nanda, we've had an interesting question from Ashley asking, do we think that high performance computing and quantum technology is going to be the step that allows really accurate sustainability and emissions reporting? So Nanda, do you think that's going to kind of really transform our ability to report on that? Or do you think it doesn't need, perhaps those are very advanced computing skills will certainly be helpful, but I'm not sure how essential they are. What are your thoughts on that?
No, I think this is the way forward. This is going to happen whether we like it or not. Supply chain need to sort of transform, and the resources need to transform to be able to understand these new technologies, but not only understand but also implement in such a way that it makes the supply chain more proactive. So as you said, the customers are definitely in the market who demands sustainable products, but when it comes to paying any premium for sustainability, that's still a no in the market. It's not very popular. So supply chain is still under demand and pressure to be able to reduce the cost, and the only way they can do is to get these technologies and on board as soon as possible, because this is going to save money for the company.
Yeah, and on the subject of sustainability footprint, I mean, Nicola, you're mentioning Rivian, which obviously fantastic to be in the electric vehicle manufacturing sort of supply chain, I guess. Yevgeny has said, not quite sure what his father-in-law's got to do with it, but he has raised the point, what about the emissions in making the batteries for vehicles? So I mean, I guess it just brings home that challenge about, you're absolutely right, that being sustainable and having those credentials is fantastic for customers, and they expect that now, but very difficult. Are you honest in terms of measuring right through to making the batteries and mining the lithium and the life of the batteries? How does that get worked in, to say that an EV is still a very good option, versus running an old, organic fuel vehicle for longer, where it's already been made. So actually its footprint of manufacture is perhaps smaller. So a difficult area. What are your thoughts on that one?
I think that's a fair challenge. That's a fair ask. It's not perfect. What we're just saying is that moving into this direction is the good thing to do. So that's why we are investing a lot. Are we saying that it's perfect and we're going to have zero emission? No, definitely no. But at least it's better than the current setup that we have. And we need to learn by doing, and we need to move into this direction. We have seen like a lot of the evolutions in this world happened also by learning how to do it and how to improve. So it's a known challenge. We also know, as you mentioned, that moving to EV instead of fuel is also the right thing to do. So I'm pretty sure that from an EV perspective, we have made so many progresses in the last 5 to 10 years. I'm pretty sure that if we have this discussion again in 5 to 10 years, the situation will be different, because we'll find a better way to really be even more sustainable. I'm a really an optimistic person, and a good believer in the fact that if we use the human brain the right way and we make the right investment, we are going to make some progresses. It needs to take time, but we are going to move into this direction.
Okay, no, thank you. So our second main agenda point is strategies and practices for improving supply chain resilience. And again, actually, sort of comes back, I think, to what we were talking about earlier about collaboration. And Ashley's got another sort of interesting question there, that Ford's also announced a significant investment in lithium suppliers. So do we think that vertical integration is a really key way to reduce risk in the supply chain and therefore improve supply chain resilience? So Ahmed, I don't know if you want to talk about vertical integration particularly, or other ways to handle supply chain resilience?
It could go either way, vertical or outsourcing everything. Of course, the vertical integration does lower the risk a little bit of having a short supply. Otherwise, if some people do rely heavily on outsourcing from other countries or other geopolitical or other geographical regions, just because they are well advanced in this particular type of product. And so it depends on the strategy of the company, and it depends on what do they want to do. I mean, do they want to save money, or do they want to invest for now, or do they want to outsource until they build the local plant? It all depends on the company strategy and policy. I honestly, the vertical integration is nice, but it needs to be, you need to be selling to your, yourself and to others. So you're going to have to find other customers that will want this product, and you will have to invest heavily in the technology and into the sales, and it's going to be a challenging business. However, it can eventually pay off.
Yeah. Okay. No. Interesting thoughts. It's a very nice, attractive sounding solution, and it's a good question you raised, Ashley. But it may be a lot more complex, and maybe better just to deal with suppliers in a normal way, but have a good relationship with them. Nanda, what do you think? Do you think vertical integration is a really important way of getting supply chain resilience, or are there other things that you'd prefer to focus on?
Well, there are of course other things. But when we come back to this point about Ford, it's not only Ford, couple of other automotive manufacturers, they are investing. And then we are talking about lithium. That's a rare earth mineral, and it's not easily found everywhere. And they're investing in Germany region, where we have found excess of this lithium. But also the process being adopted is to convert into lithium oxide is the most green process ever in the world, and that's what is driving automotive manufacturers to invest into this. This is a specific case, but definitely vertical integration will help, because of things are going very fast than the normal traditional way where the diesel and petrol cars and gas cars are built. So that means the suppliers and potential suppliers are not ready with the investments because of the recent years of pandemic issues. So that means vertical integration, collaboration, investment in key technologies is the way forward. I think that will become the way of supply chain. And the most important for supply chain is to get the attention of the C team and the board in advance to be able to back their capex investments. So that's the key for the companies, I think.
Yeah, no, certainly bringing the top management on the journey and to get their buy-in is critical. I mean, Nicola, you must be working with a lot of different companies. Are there particular pain points that you're seeing that are sort of common in companies, and what are the solutions for those pain points in terms of resilience?
So I think the pain point that we are facing right now, we consider this more as opportunities, but like our customers are really looking for a different way of purchasing, and they have some specific needs, just because each company, for example, has a different way of handling the return to office policy, the work from home policy. There are some people that are also not working in the same city all the time, or that are traveling for their business. So we need to be like really able to customize the way we provide the products to our customers. And we also need to be able to answer fast to them because we have a lot of customers in B2B that are also using us in B2C, and they are used to have a fast delivery. So we need to provide the same the same standards in B2B that we have in B2C. The main difference is that we are talking about bigger quantities in general. And we also need to be, and what we're doing with a lot of customers is we need to be clear in the impact and the progresses that we are making from a supply chain perspective, because as I was saying to you, a lot of our customers are being more and more focused around their sustainable goals, and they want to know which part of their purchase are sustainable, for example. So what we do is, for our biggest customers, we organize at least a quarterly sync with them to provide them all of the details, which product they have ordered, for which office, which category, what was the price, and also which part of their business is sustainable. And the tools that we develop internally inside Amazon, all our tech people, they work on these tools not only for people being inside Amazon, but also for our customers. So any B2B customer working with Amazon Business can use all our tools, like spend visibility, for example, is an option when they can see all the purchase they made by department, by category. We have the same with business analytics. And so they can see in real time which part of their business is sustainable, in which categories, and they can really redirect that and make some adjustments if needed. Okay. So this is the way we work. A lot of around visibility. We communicate far more than a few years ago around the sustainable approach.
Yeah. Okay. And certainly, I mean, that leads nicely to our third point. And given that we're talking about building resilience in the supply chain through an economic downturn, spend, which is a third point, how spend in your supply chain is essential for managing risk and building resilience. So I guess, that can come in two ways. It's monitoring your spend, being able to kind of, manage it and reduce your spend and control it. But I guess it's also investing in the right way to build up resilience, and low cost is not always low risk. For example, you may pay more for a near shoring or local sourcing. You may pay more, but you certainly have a reduced lead time and probably more reliability of supply. So Ahmed, I mean, I guess you're working across quite wide regions, not just Egypt. What are your thoughts on how best to control spend, or where best to invest in higher spend?
Okay, well, you invest in a couple of things. First of all, it's a whole the money cycle, or the financial cycle, basically relies heavily on having the right customers here, paying you some in US dollars, some in they pay in Egyptian pounds, for example. You have a diverse portfolio of products. And then you start investing basically in new production lines that you can actually that fulfill a market requirement. Basically, if I'm selling one or two products, for example, I work for a company called United Oil. If I'm selling one or two, three, four products that are standard and everybody else in the market sells them, well, no, I can actually invest in a production line that can introduce more products, that can help bakeries, that can help dairy. I can increase my customer portfolio by introducing new products that were heavily imported before, but now I can actually produce them locally. Exportation is key. Export is key to have hard foreign currency coming in and flowing into the country, and flowing into the company, so that I can buy raw materials and I can import some raw materials, production lines. So you have to diversify your money, your income. You have to diversify your customer portfolio. You have to work on fulfilling market needs. And that's why, again, I have to stress heavily on training your staff and training your R&D and your customers. Your customers need to be trained on the new products.
Thank you. Yeah, well, that's really interesting. And as you mentioned, as I mentioned in your introduction, having that sales experience as well as the supply chain experience, it does mean that you've got a very strong message there. Really understand your markets, understand your customers, and that additional requirement in a country like Egypt, where consideration of the currency is so critical. I mean, it's important for all of us, in international supply chains, but particularly where you've got a more fluctuating currency like the Egyptian pound. Nando, what are your thoughts on spend when managing risk and building resilience?
Yeah, when it comes to spend, my comments are like this. So traditionally, you have seen the supply chain companies were driving supply chain towards cost reductions. and then they were looking at the what we call as a spend queue to know where they are spending money and how they can make savings. But if you reflect on what Nicholas was talking a little bit earlier, so supply chains need to really, as you say, invest in their own partners to find out which part of their business is sustainable, because most of the because of historically supply chains were driving for cost reductions and the lowest quote suppliers. So most of those suppliers are not equipped or ready to invest to have a visibility on their sustainable situation, sustainability, which part of the businesses, and they may be very relevant suppliers, partners to the company. So that means supply chain not only have to look at where are they spending, but they need to also go a little bit further into why, and also check how the transactions are made. Those two are more important than just understanding where they are spending. And then that means you are already getting into a situation where, as you commented about investing in the right place. So when you talk about why and how the transactions are made, you are already making a strategy to sort of invest where you need to invest and to make sure that which part of their partners business is sustainable. So I think the spend analysis, what we have been traditionally doing in supply chain, needs a bit of change or transformation into these aspects from my experience.
Thank you, Nanda. That sounds like a very nice lead in, actually, Nicola, to you, because you were talking before about the spend visibility tool that you use, and it sounds like that is a sort of a bit of a step change in the ability to analyze and identify key trends in companies' spending. So do you want to talk a little bit more about that, or feel free to comment on other aspects?
So this tool helps after the purchase, but we can also influence before the purchase. This tool is the consequence of what happened after the employees have purchased some products. We're able to say, in the last 3 months, you reach 12% of sustainable products, which is directly focused. It was directly a focus, and it was a big part of the business that's generated, for example, for office products. That's something we can do. Another rule that we can say is, I give you an example. If a customer has the objective to improve their sustainable share of business by 500 basis points year-over-year, they are 10% last year, they want to reach 15% this year. What we can do is, in the way we set up the rules, we can just put the products that are sustainable at the top of the page in terms of search. So that's naturally, because we know that when people are in website, rarely people go to the 3rd page or the 4th page. If you go at the top of the page, it's going to improve the conversion ratio. So this is what we can do and what we can work on. And we work with the CPO or the CFO, that are the persona that we work with directly to influence the purchase from their employees. But what we do also, we work really closely with the marketplace and directly with the brands. We have high standards to also select which products are sustainable and which products are not. So the product that we push for purchase to our customers have high standards, and they're really sustainable.
Yeah. Can I ask a quick follow-up there? Because obviously the main focus of our main subject is building resilience, but it sounded, I think, from what you said before, that it would also allow the spend analysis to say, well, you were spending, did we realize we're spending 20% with this one group of companies? We hadn't identified that they're all different companies within the same group, or that we're sourcing, 70% from a particular country we hadn't realized. I mean, does it help companies do that, which means they can identify where they're too much dependent?
For sure. And you're talking about countries, but what we see a lot with our companies is sometimes they are going to say, we have 3 offices, one in New York, one in Houston, and one in Seattle. We want our local offices to increase their part of spend for small businesses in their area. We want them to give a bit back to the community. And we can set up that. We're going to set up 3 groups, and we're going to push the products that are around the offices. It helps us to do 2 things. First thing is to be intentional in getting back to the community. And by nature, if you're purchasing a product that is around the corner versus a product that is from a country in the other part of the world, you are sustainable. So that's a good way for us to do that.
Yeah. Okay. No, thank you. I mean, it's fascinating the way all these subjects interweave, resilience, spending, sustainability, kind of community, social kind of contributions as well. As a final question, I'm conscious we're sort of nearing the end of our time. Let's have a sort of final quick question to all of you. So briefly, what would you advise the audience as the focus in building resilience in their supply chain if there's an economic downturn? Ahmed, I mean, you talked about quite a lot about the product and the customer as being the focus area. What would be your key piece of advice? You're still muted. Ahmed, you're muted. That's it. Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Yeah.
Okay. Just to be proactive, to be updated with the news, with the political situations abroad, commodity updates, to take action, to analyze risk, and to basically focus on how to sustain the business and how to grow it under these hard economic conditions and under all these political problems that are happening worldwide.
Okay, thank you very much. So planning and monitoring, really important. And Nanda, what would your advice be in resilience in an economic downturn? Can you hear us, Nanda? I'm not sure if we might have finally lost the link to Kathmandu. Well, button if you can.
Can you hear me?
We can now. Yes, we can. Yes.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, I think we've lost Nanda again. We'll leave it there, Nanda. Just hang on if you can for the last minute or two. And Nicola, finally with you, what would your key advice be if there's one piece of advice?
My two key advices is sustainability should not be a goal, should be the base for everybody. We all need to think about being more sustainable in our professional and private life. I think for me, that's the base. The second aspect, as a company, you need to set up some goals around being sustainable. You need to improve that. And the first step to set up some goals and to make some progresses on this area is also to understand which part of your business or of your purchases are currently sustainable. So I think my recommendation is to really go deeper into understanding into details, like which part are sustainable today and how can we improve.
Okay, no, thank you. It's good advice. Good. Well, thank you for those really interesting points, which we've ranged as usual across many different topics related to our main topic. I have the happy task of awarding the mug for today, and I think Ashley, you had some great questions. So Ashley Cook, a mug will be on its way to you. I think you might have one or two already, so your set is building up. Our episode next week is called Managing Commodity Shortages and Inflation. So I'm sure some of the lessons from today about shortages will come in again, and in a world of inflation, which the latest figures in the UK certainly are still pretty high, even if they've dropped a little bit. So that's next week on the 31st of May at 4 p.m. British Summer Time. And so finally, thank you again to my three guests, Ahmed Eldib, B2B Sales Manager, United Oil Processing and Packaging, Nanda Kishore, Head of Global Supply Chain at Eramet Titanium and INAS. And thank you again for joining from Kathmandu, and I hope you get your flight safely very soon. And finally, Nicola Olag, General Manager for Private Sector Sales at Corporate Division in Amazon. So thank you, all three of you. Thank you, audience, for your great contributions as usual, and hope to see you next Wednesday.